Welcome to the Local Leverage Podcast. Today we are speaking with the co-founder of My Home Sold, which is a prominent real estate investor in Southern California. They've done over 2,000 transactions. We're going to be speaking with Nick Ramirez. Today we cover everything from lead generation tactics and strategies to how they structure their teams and processes, and even outlook on 2025. Nick, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, I want to jump right in. You're a pretty prolific investor in Southern California area. How's business been and how's this market treating you?
Wow. So I'd say almost the end of this quarter has been on fire for us. We have been seeing a lot of in-depth opportunities throughout SoCal because our marketing bounds go through all over the major counties here in Southern California. So we've been getting a lot of great deals. And just seeing a big uptick in our marketing as well. So I think the marketing has been a big push for us, and I'm excited to see where this year has been. But overall, the last year, even up on all last in 2024, has been very, very strong. And for us, since we're in the distressed property world, I feel like for us, there's a lot of opportunity everywhere we go. So for us, I feel like it's never in like a downtick. I always see it being an opportunity for us to go out there, invest more, especially heavily in our marketing. But yeah, we're super excited to see where this year comes as well.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the distress situations are happening more and more. It's a matter of then tapping into those or finding those. Were you already in an upswing with your marketing efforts in 2024, or is this a new effort given the conditions?
I think over the last year and a half, it's still been new for us because we haven't been doing it that long as far as on the inbound scale, even though we've been running our business since 2019. We really got into it, yeah, I'd say just about a year and a half ago. But I would say the more we've been on Google, the more we've been really heavily into our marketing on the inbound side. We've seen a huge uptick because, like you just said, there's a lot of more distressed opportunities coming. And there's not a lot of people who are doing what we're doing because the investing side of the marketing it can be a lot. It can be a risk, but I think the risk opportunity for us has been super high, and we're just trying to create as much market share as possible as far as getting a lot of sellers to call in and be there as quickly as we can.
Yeah, yeah. Can you unpack for me how you look at inbound marketing? Like, what does that entail for all of you?
So inbound for us entails anything that we're doing through Google, through PPC. We are doing mailers. We also run our TV ads on commercials. So we're all over the major news networks. So anything that sees us that way is all coming through in an inbound piece. Because we've been running TV since last summer. Google has been the last year and a half. Mailers, we've been running very solid the last year every single month. So any type of piece of marketing that people see us, and our goal is to get as out far wide as possible, even with future on the radio, future on the billboard as well, and even on the buses as well.
Yeah.
We do see huge uptick because I think the more you're out there and the more the brand recognition is there, more sellers are just going to end up seeing the name, and more so recently be getting a lot of referrals because they've been seeing us through agents, seeing us through families that we've helped buy and sell their houses. So I think the more your name is out there, the bigger the opportunity.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, and it's not just the awareness, right? It's not just establishing the brand, but every time you put your name out there, it's continuing to establish trust as well. So I think that's
Exactly.
really key.
Big time.
So where did you all start? I mean, I have a couple questions about the marketing still, but
Yep.
where did you all start? You started with pay-per-click?
Yep. So we started with pay-per-click. Adrian literally was teaching himself. He was like, "Hey," before he even taught himself, we worked with prior companies, and we saw an opportunity. But then I just kept thinking, one of my good friends out in Texas, that's all they do. They've been running pay-per-click for I think almost 9 years and doing everything in house. And so he was the one that made me, the push to, hey, why don't you guys try and learn it, invest into it, because you might see a bigger outbreak than you would by hiring someone like an agency to run your ads. So I was like, hey, Adrian, why don't we see something to invest into it, just like our masterminds that we're always pouring into, and our human development growth as well that we do with like Tony Robbins and such. So he was like, cool. So we ended up learning it, and within 6 months, we just saw a huge rise because we had full control. We knew which faucet to turn on, which faucet to turn off, and we just saw a huge uptick. And that was, I would say, yeah, about sometime in late 2023 that we really started pushing that ourselves and doing all of our marketing in-house. And we saw that,
Was
yeah.
was that a big learning curve, that first 6 months?
It was because you're learning all the keywords, you're learning all the negatives as well, because sometimes those can actually be good for you. And then we
Right.
realize when you're hitting those keywords, which sellers are typing in what, and we can see a whole diagram. So it is still, even to this day, a learning curve, and he's still going through it and trying to manipulate the site as much we can to bring in the best quality leads. Because there's times where we'll get an influx of leads, and then there are times where we won't because the amount of keywords that are being used or the time that Google is just forcing all the ad spend. So there's a lot of different, tricks and stuff you can do to try and dilate and try and make this thing as good as possible. But it's still, I think it's always going to be a work in progress. Never going to be a perfection.
Yeah, for sure. It also, I mean, has a little bit of that kind of black box element, right? Where you're putting money in and kind of fingers crossed, but if a competitor bids you up or there's other just factors that can all of a sudden make it feel like, hey, I'm spending more, but not necessarily getting more out.
Exactly. And
So
for
you
us,
experience that too?
yeah, we have for sure. Like towards the end of Q4 was a little tough for us, but this whole Q1 has been all PPC. We're hoping to see some commercial deals come in, but it's all been Google. So whatever Adrian's been doing, it's working. It's working tremendously, but there's always things when we think it's going well, do we increase, or are there other ways to still increase it? So that's
Sure.
where you said it's that black box where we don't know if we're going to spend more and are we going to get the same out of it, or is it going to be a downtick month where certain counties are better than others? So it varies truly. 1 month it can be OC in LA is on fire, and then this upcoming month we're seeing nothing there. It's all IE and Riverside. So it's like, which one is carrying more weight? And we feel it's always been a teeter-totter between the counties.
Yeah. What was the point at which I mean, this is obviously after the first 6 months, but you started seeing a lot of great results from paid. What was the point at which you said, geez, we need another channel to go after? And how did you decide what that next channel would be?
So when we got pay-per-click running and going, we were already doing cold call and texting. So we already had those two other channels pumping, but
Okay.
that's a lot of sweat equity because we had full-time texters and we have like 3 or 4 at the time VA callers. At one point we had like 25 callers.
Wow.
And then our goal in mind, we always said when we're getting to a point in our business where we don't have to have the outbound marketing, we want to fully replace it with inbound. So that's always been our goal. How do we get on TV? Number one, how do we become the inbound company where people see our brand as bigger than what it is, but they know they can trust us through agents and through sellers who have been working with us in the past. And so after we got PPC up and going, we started sliding in mailers, and then mailers was the one that really took off. Those can
So I
be,
find that interesting. I mean, just a tip on that. I'm curious that you describe direct mail as an inbound strategy. Why do you see it as inbound? I tend to look at that as an outbound strategy.
for some reason, when I think of mailers, yes, we're the ones sending out the pieces, or our company is doing that. They're the sellers who are getting the pieces, and they're the ones calling in. So they see the
Okay.
mail piece, and they're the ones like, hey, they
Taking
look,
the initiative to respond.
yeah. And what we've also noticed, here's our mailers, they'll cross-reference it. They'll Google us, and then all of a sudden the TV's on in front of them, and they see us on TV. So the point about bringing everything full circle is how can we get them in front of every piece of marketing possible that shows our company brand? Look at our
Yeah.
reviews, look at everything, because that's a full circle. Whether they got the mailer piece 2 months ago, then they saw us on TV after watching CNN, there we go. I want to make
That's
sure.
always the challenge.
Exactly.
Yeah. How do you determine which thing was the thing that moved them?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you do that? What is the process by which you try to establish attribution of which marketing channel or activity drove their response?
It's a great question. I mean, that's our first question is, how did you hear about us? Oh, I was watching TV. Oh, great. I'm assuming you're watching the news because most of our ads, our spend is on only news networks. And they say, yeah. But sometimes they say, well, I saw you on TV and then I didn't think about anything until 2 months later when I needed to sell. And then I Googled you.
Right.
So
Right.
we ask ourselves, where did it really, really come from? I guess you can say in that example, TV, but on paper, they went to Google and typed this in because on
Exactly.
on our KPI track sheet is showed, really Google.
It's very difficult. I mean, I think in all different types of businesses, attribution is really, really tough.
Yeah.
Unless you're just running a single channel, and then it's obvious. But as soon as you start having multiple variables or variants and variables, it's difficult to understand where they really came from.
Exactly, for sure.
I also find it's interesting too that you can ask somebody, what was it that made you call in today? And they're going to just go back to the thing that was memorable to them. It might not even be the last thing.
Definitely. Or it might be another piece that may not have been your company. They just
Right.
happen,
Right.
and that happens quite often. We're just like, oh, it's a blessing. We looked at it as a blessing, So however which way we can turn that into an opportunity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. What do you see as next steps? Are there other channels that you're exploring or things that you're interested in trying in 2025?
Future goal between, if it's not Q2, Q3 would be radio and billboards. That's like our next step to more marketing push, and then potentially bus stops, buses. So but the next push for sure will be radio, 100%.
I was recently in Southern California and picked up one of your commercials on TV, so that was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, it's cool that we get to be around, and my friends are like, "Oh, I saw you guys on TV. Isn't that super cool?" And it's good because we want to get our name out there as much as we can and create that recognition, which is tough because not many people are willing to invest in that risk. And how we started that to get on TV was a huge risk. I think it still is because the return is not as big, but I think for the long-term play, people start to see the name more and more and then have a knack for, all right, I'm ready to sell, I'm going to call them.
I love that. I mean, and so how do you guys determine whether that's budget worthwhile or not? I mean, like if you think about that TV piece is maybe that branding element we were talking about, maybe it's establishing trust, but it might not be the thing that's really driving activities. So how do you look at it all in totality and say, okay, we're still comfortable making that investment, even though I can't pinpoint that this was the thing that drove it?
Yeah, it's something we were talking about yesterday. And all of our friends that were on TV, whether they're out here or they were in other states that do what we're doing, their biggest mistakes at every time was us pulling out because it's harder to get back in than it is to stay in. So if you have those 3, 4, 5 months of reserves for TV, stay in it because that's our biggest mistake. And so we've had everyone tell us that, and they wish they were still on TV because once they leave the station, they told us it's hard to create that relationship again because how do they not know they're going to come back in for 30 days and leave?
Oh, I see.
So from what we've been, it's still a learning curve with these network stations too. They want certain things. They want rights of our commercial, of the music, even though we brought everything and we paid for it all up front. Because instead of us going through an agency, we did everything up front. So they would rather work with the one guy versus the company behind them. So for us, it's just not only bringing in as much revenue as possible and allocating those funds for the TV stations, but I think the longer we can stay in and see that push, I think the return may not be today, but 6, 9 months from now, we'll see that pay off dividends. So it's been a push since we started before the Olympics. That was why we got in, so we can get in for the Olympics. And that was a big push for us. It was a big risk, but I think that helped catapult us to where we're at today because people couldn't stop seeing us. I think we aired like 60 something times over those like 2.5, 3 week span of the Olympics.
Was that a larger investment because of the traffic they were driving with the Olympics? Was that more of a budget at that time than it is maybe now?
Yeah, and I think they wanted to see if we're willing to put up the money to actually make that investment. And so we're like, you know what? Let's do it. Why not? At that time we had extra funds that we were going to allocate instead of going back more into spending more on mailers, spending more on PPC. We decided let's just take that risk, and didn't pay off 100%. I don't want to sit here and say it paid off 3, 4x. It was actually a negative. We got, I think, 1 or 2 deals from it. However, the phones wouldn't stop ringing off the hook. It has not since that day. So I think if you're having to make that big risk opportunity investment, into that day, that's the day we'll forever be grateful, because where we're at today, people will still say when they call in, we remembered you guys from the Olympics. We remember you guys being there many, many times. We've never seen you guys. We always see the open doors, the Redfins, and one of our other local competitors out here in California, but we never saw you guys. And so the more they're seeing is, the more they're attaching this blue house logo.
Exactly. It's great that you were able to stay in and have the intestinal fortitude to stick with it, even though you weren't seeing the results. What did that feel like at that point when you were not seeing results and you're seeing this big budget, big investment going out? How did you maintain focus and say, nope, we're committed, we're going to stick to this?
Well, for me, I'm an athlete, so I hate losing. So does Adrian. We hate losing. We hate, it's like for us, it's like a gut punch, because it's like we keep falling flat on our face. It's like, and then we get up and we fall flat. We get up and fall flat. But I think it's the ones that push towards that. And the best analogy is the buffalo running in the storm. While everyone else is running out of it, we decided to run right through that. And for us, that was the breakaway, because most people aren't willing to not only make the investment, but go to sleep at night knowing it's not paying off yet.
Right.
That's one thing I think me and Adrian have. That's just a powerful thing within our brand, our value, is just the commitment and the drive and the tenacity that our forces combined together just create this element and the aura in our brand. Because that's just a powerful thing, is that if you don't quit, you'll never lose. Like, that's just a matter of fact. If you put your head down and you focus hard, the outcome will be there. And how the outcome will be there is by you making not only that investment, but into yourself as well and believing it. Because it's all here. It's all that 80%. Everything else is this 20% is the skill set. But if the 80%'s here and you're good to go and you believe that you can do in the right mindset, it'll always pay dividends. And for us, it's still continuing that mindset. I think once you let that mindset go, I think for me, it became over. So it's just a continuing fight every single day, but it's a fight I'd be in 24/7, 100%.
I couldn't agree more. I look back at different endeavors I've done, different businesses I've run, and resilience and tenacity, like you said, are just so vital. You don't always have to be the smartest, don't always have to be the hardest working, but you have to be the one that's willing to take those knocks, get back up, get right back in the game.
Yep.
And oftentimes that's the thing that separates people, because there's many people that will just get knocked down and put their tail between their legs, and that's it. They're done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Pushing forward. That's it. Pushing forward every day.
So one last question on the marketing thing. How do you determine when to divest? When do you look at something and say, okay, this is just not producing what we need, or it's just not the right fit, we need to walk away from it and maybe go to a different channel or strategy?
So we'll look back 90 days. Typically, we'll look at a runway and see what it produced the last 90 days. And if we feel like, for instance, texting over that course of last Q4 just was not hitting, we made the decision to roll that budget and just add it to PPC. You know, it was an additional cost that was bringing us a deal every couple months. And for us, we asked ourselves, did it make sense to hire more people in-house to text for us all day long and to produce more data, to produce more numbers, which costs more money? Or do we just shut it down completely and put all of our faith and trust into a consistent faucet that's just running flow of deals? And we made the decision just like that with texting and cold calling, the same thing. You know, we realize you look at it on a KPI scale, it's a big return. It's like a massive 14, 20x plus return. But we realized those deals last year were maybe one every 90 days, one every 4 months, but those deals were cracking $200,000-300,000 a piece. So you ask yourself, is it worth it, or is it worth it to take that money, throw it into an inbound marketing channel that's producing consistent flow? And that's we made the decision to turn those off.
It's a gutsy move, though. It's hard to abandon something you've been doing for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
Especially when it's showing results. It's not like it was just a total dud. It's just a matter of like, could we be more efficient and effective somewhere else?
And it carried our business for almost 4 straight years, you know, just because that's how I started on the business, is just cold calling off your guys' data. Literally cold calling and texting. That was literally is how I started, and probably how most every agent starts. But that wasn't up until a couple of years ago where we really made that decision to turn the marketing piece around, but not to ever not texting or cold calling. It still works. A lot of my buddies still text and cold call, and they're getting deals consistently. But we've always said this, what you focus on, you'll end up receiving. So if you focus hard on texting, cold calling, you have nothing but to receive texting, cold calling deals, but that's the low hanging fruit.
So you guys are focused on investments of all types. Tell me a little bit about kind of how you approach it. Are you primarily doing buy and flip? Are you holding? What's the thesis for your investments?
Yeah, so our main piece is we do a lot of wholesaling, and then we do fix and flip as well. More so, fix and flip was a lot more last couple years, but we've just been heavy more into just the wholesaling.
Yep. Is that because of the cap rate, or what's driving it?
It's more so because of the deals and the amount of time we're in these deals. Sometimes when we buy these, we're in the minimum like 120 days, and that's before
Okay.
getting them on the market. So I think for us, it's like if it makes sense to assign it to one of our investors and close on it pretty quick, based on the amount of money we'd make flipping it, it just makes sense to just get it out to one of our investors and close fast.
Okay. But all of these, you're looking for off-market properties that are having some sort of a distress signal or multiple distress signals, I'm assuming.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's times where it may not always be distressed. Sometimes there's just sellers who want to just close quick, cash out, and move out of the country. Cool. Not distressed. They just want to cash out and be out of California. So, but for, I'd say the most part, it's always going to be the distress situation.
Yeah. Do you find yourselves focusing in on certain types of distress so that you can provide, better services for those people? Because oftentimes it's not just about, the fact that they're maybe facing foreclosure, but it's, the fact that, hey, I got to tell my kids that we have to change schools. It's all the other stuff that is under the surface that you need to help them navigate.
Yeah. It's like across the table. I think it comes down to every situation that we deal with probates, divorce, death, trust situations, title issues, tax abatement, everything that you could think of. Like, we'll hit everything across the table, because if there is one company that can solve it, it's us. And our title team and our escrow, which is the amount of experience that they have. And those have also been some late issues that we've been having with sellers, is that they tried with their previous agent to either fix the issue and they couldn't, so they call us. And so I think the experience we have in any distressed situation, it may not be even the house is distressed, it's just the situation is distressed.
Right.
And there's issues that needs a little bit of like a stronger upper team that might have the influx of a team and research to get it done, especially in the title and the escrow part. So I think that's a big upswing we have for us and that we offer. But then there's other cases where title's clear, it's just the property's old and outdated, and there's foundation issues, and the seller needs money up front. Whatever the creativiness of every deal is, because every deal is different, which is crazy.
Yeah.
You'd think every deal is similar. There's similar intricates to it, but for the most part, every story is different. Every house we buy has a story to it, and however we can solve their problem by being that extra creative and that little part of the piece of the puzzle, I think really can take over that market share on those deals.
You mentioned using data for this. I mean, how much do you rely on data to tell you that story? So that, because oftentimes a seller, they'll disclose certain things, but maybe they don't disclose everything. And how do you use data to really understand what's going on in a situation and how to best approach it?
Great question. I think when you look at these specific sellers and then you run them back through the data piece, you see they pop up on multiple pieces of data. They pop up on a foreclosure list. They pop up on a missed water bill. They pop up on electricity bill, like everything that comes up. So there's a piece of distress that comes in, not just with the home itself, but with other things in their life. And they find out that there's a lot of missing pieces that they don't know how to fit into the puzzle. And that's where we come in. And so I think data is just as powerful, because we're able to, on our data, we're able to actually identify and locate the amount of stress that is on one particular address. And it'll actually showcase like a high probability rate of, it's like a heat map. It's like a probability of them going to sell. And those are some properties we've looked at from 5-6 years ago on our data. And you look, most have sold. So whatever that piece of data that the companies are utilizing and you guys are utilizing, it's really breaking down the probability and it will showcase like 86, 7, whatever percent of them going to sell. It may not be today, but it might be in a few months or a year from now. And so we use that piece to really dive in with our mailer pieces. We use that piece to send to our network stations because they can actually use that data and they can target those specific sellers that may not sell today, but they'll sell in the future.
Are you using that data as well to not only target them as, hey, this is a likely seller in the future, but do you use that to shape your messaging and your approach?
We do. We do. It just depends how, because we may not know the full scoop. We just know that there's a probability of them selling. So it comes down to our acquisitions team. When they receive the call or it's a follow-up situation, we're making sure to understand the motivation. For us, we preach the biggest on motivation and of course their timeline. But if those two don't line up, the price doesn't matter. I've always said, and even when I was still am learning and still going through it, we teach our team and tell our team, if that motivation is there, the price will take care of itself because there's a bigger need for them to sell versus, if I don't get my price, I won't sell. Versus, no, I have to be at my new job or I'm losing this house in the next 2 weeks. And if I can't get out of here, I'm going to lose everything on the table.
Yeah.
And so we use that data to really drive that force home on being able to really identify what is most important here and how can we solve that problem.
You must do a ton of training with your team just on, active listening, and it's really trying to dig and understand what somebody's real pain points are and kind of the impact of those. I mean, it seems like so much of that is required on the person who engages to be a good listener and also probing and curious.
100%. Our training is derived solely on, I call it film room. We're going over all of our calls all the time. So everything's recorded that we go in and just go over the calls with our team, things that they missed or they actually caught. We go through all of our 4 pillars, the motivation, the timeline, condition, price. But like you said, the active listening is the most important part. Because if you're able to really break down what they're telling you and turn that into a question, that's going to further along that sales process and that conversation to really turn into something. But it's bigger than just, asking those right questions. I believe it is really about building that relationship.
Yeah.
No one likes to do business they don't want to do business with. They do someone that is similar to themselves or that they feel in a light of, you remind me of my son, you remind me of my grandson. It's like right then and there, like that's the active listening where she or he felt some sort of a comfort over a phone. That's the cool thing, over the phone that makes them want to do business with you because there's some sort of connection that linked up with them psychologically.
I'll bet that when you got into this business, you had no idea you're going to be a sales coach. I mean, at what point did you realize that, hey, this is really what this is about, and we've got to get really exceptional at training our people to do exactly what you just said?
I love doing that, and I love being able to comp and train with our team because for me, it's like I've been an athlete my whole life growing up, and so for me, if I wasn't going to be in sports, how can I take what I learned in sports and correlate it to sales? And it's the best thing in the world is to be in what we do because it's a blessing, number one. And number two, I never would have thought I'd be in the distressed type of real estate. Because when I started, my goal was to be either in the development side of building or to work high-end luxury homes because we live here in Orange County. Like nothing gets better than being on the ocean and selling those big homes. But I realized there's a bigger need in our space than just working high-end properties. There's another part of this world that many people don't like to work with. So it's like people think, oh, I love the $15 million homes. I told them I love the $200,000 homes in San Bernardino with the blue tarp roof and the broken window because there's a story behind that. And how can we solve their problem? And I think that's one thing me and Adrian probably really, really aligned on is how do we solve as many problems as possible in a given day, in a given month, in a given year. Because the more problems we solve is the more opportunity that comes for us and building that around our team and that to buy into it as well. Because most people they want the luxury stuff and they want to work with those sellers, which we've worked with them and we still work with them on our brokerage side 100%. But something for us attracts the problem solving world and being able to work on the distress side and really hone in on that. When most won't, we'll go right into those.
Yeah. You guys have done over 800 transactions, right?
Yeah, I'd say me and him put together well over 2,000.
Oh, wow. Okay. So,
With Adrian's, yeah.
okay. So in 2,000 deals, like, what are the biggest takeaways? What's the biggest lessons you've learned about real estate investing?
Oof. Man, there's a lot. There's a lot. Understanding I think the key importance of the process, because there's a process of running a deal from A to Z, but then there's a lot of things in between that can go south real quick. And being able to stay up front with your sellers if you're working with them before it closes. But then when we buy these deals, things come up because we're buying them the way they are. And so there's always something that comes up that we're learning every single day. And as much as we want to be in the deal, we're in it with title issues, when we're working with our contractors. So something always comes up, but over those last 2,000 plus deals, it's always something new. It doesn't matter if it looks like it's always been repetitive. There's something in that deal that, wow, I never thought you could do that. Or, wow, our attorney told us this forever ago, but then it changed. So it's always staying up to date with the real estate code. Because
So
if we don't know, yeah.
how do you continue to refine then your process? I mean, I hear you saying it's all about process. I mean, so are these playbooks for each of the facets of the business? And then as things change, are you constantly iterating and updating these?
Definitely. We're always trying to evolve. We're always trying to grow within the business. And if we stay behind like the blockbuster, we're going to get caught in the storm. So it's us always staying up to date, even with our agreements, with our addendums, with our disclosures, everything we have our sellers sign. If they're not up to code, like there might be something that we could either get in trouble on or not be up to date on. So we're always in touch with our attorneys. We're always in touch with our team to update them, whether it's every 90 days, 6 months, or whenever that specific code is changed in the agreement, we have to update it. I mean, we've probably gone through 10 plus different contracts to really, really strengthen it, but to understand it protects not only us, but the seller. You want to work with the seller that is working up to standards, up to today's bar, with everything that they sign, and also with escrow. So I think it's important to work not only with a great escrow company and title company that's also up to today's standard, but making sure that we're evolving. Because if we're not evolving, we're just going to end up being left behind and just being the old company that just stays by the old books back then and doesn't ever change. And so for us, we always want to make sure if it's in our process and our standard operating procedures within, if it's acquisitions, if it's our operation side or TC side or our back-end investment side, we're always making sure those books are up to date.
Is that something that you and Adrian take the responsibility for, or is that something that you've created just a culture that, hey, we're process driven and therefore everybody's got a role and responsibility for keeping these things updated?
I think it's a mix of both, because we like to stay as up to date as possible and we like to evolve as we see fit, and also from our mentors that let us know from what they hear. They let us know, hey, make these changes, because if it's not without our coaches and mentors, we wouldn't honestly know, because for them to give us that insight, and that's why we always stay involved within our big masterminds, because that's where we get a lot of our juice from. We take that, implement it, and take it home, and then it's our operation manager's job to keep everything up to date. And if there's something that our acquisitions team hear through sellers, or they hear through different outlooks or different people, we bring it to the team and we go over everything, and then we make sure that if it's not up to code, let's bring it up to code, because we always want to stay on top of it and not behind it.
So sounds like you currently have coaches and mastermind groups. When did you start that, and how did you realize or determine that, hey, this is something that is important to us and that we're going to continue to invest in our own development through masterminds and coaching?
Yeah, we started investing. I know Adrian, before I met him, he was always involved with Tony Robbins and different coaches. But when we started building our business together in 2019, that's when we really started investing into our mastermind groups. So for the last 6 years now, we've just been different mastermind groups, and the big ones, Collective Genius, and they're like a big nationwide. They're like the best. Like that was 2 years ago that we joined with them, and that's where we get all of our knowledge from. We've been a part of other big mastermind groups too, but nothing compares to them because it's everyone that's in the entire country come together for those couple of days and we share everything. And what's great about those guys is that they want you to win just as much as they want to win, whether we're in the same market. And our good friends up the street, where they're the biggest company in California, like we're great friends with them. You know, of course, there's a competitive aspect to it, and we feed on that, and so do they. But what's better than to work together and grow together than to do it separately? So we all feed off each other, and it's a big investment. But I always say investing in yourself always pays dividends. Whether you're hiring a coach to work out, whether you're hiring for a dietitian, whatever, that always pays off. Because if you don't know what you don't know, then how would you ever grow and really invest that into yourself? Bigger than just the business side, but personally as well.
Right.
Because that's a big thing that we do as well.
So Collective Genius, I'm a member of that too, and they put on an amazing event. Do you tend to find more value from the event and the kind of the mainline speakers, or do you get more from pure collaboration? Kind of where do you derive the most value from that kind of a group?
My favorite days have been the track days because it's specific. So Adrian's like, I'm going to go here for marketing, I'm going to go here for dispositions, or I'm going to go for sales, and I'm going to go for innovation or whatever. So we both like know, all right, we're going to go to each room, because what I can do is when we're in those tables for 2-3 hours, I'm asking as many questions as possible, because whether that guy across from me owns 200 rentals, but he also runs a big, massive wholesale operation and vice versa, I want to make sure that I'm learning just as much whether he's in Oklahoma and we're in California. Doesn't matter. Like the mindsets are the same, because how can you build a massive operation in Oklahoma and be that successful, or whatever the case is? So my favorite is getting deep in the nitty gritty and collaborating with as many people as possible when we're there.
That's great. I concur. I really like those track sessions, and I also tend to get the most value from that.
Yeah.
I love the kind of the main stage speakers, and those are always motivational, but the real tactical day-to-day comes out of those peer groups, I believe.
That is like the best. And then the best is when you're just having a cocktail hour and you're just asking these questions where it's okay to get, and I've noticed the last couple events, a lot of these guys love to get vulnerable. And nothing makes me more happy than for them to feel that comfortable with you to get vulnerable, and helps realize, you know what? A lot of us have similar problems or similar situations that we can both collaborate on together. And to this day, we're always texting one of the guys out there, whether it's Casey in Vegas or it's Doug in Arizona. Like we just were with Doug back in November. And such a gracious human being to come show us his operation. But that's the point, is that they saw themselves when he was our age, you know, and seeing that generation grow and seeing where we can be and attain, I think must be super cool for him. So it's like he's just a big mentor for us, and someone like Casey as well, just a big, awesome person out there in Vegas. And so how can we learn from everyone, you know? Because there's something we don't know, and I always want to continue to be a sponge. That's why I always say I'm never where I'm ever going to be at, because I always want to stay at that 70, 80%. I don't want to be the ever 100%. I want to be able to learn as much I can, because there's someone out there who's just as big as we are, but how do we get there? We got to get to the next pillar somehow.
That's right. Yeah. Well, and I think, you know, the old saying, like, the more you know or the more you learn, the more you realize there's so much more to learn, right? And it's like there's always something more to strive for. So along that line, 2025, how did you establish goals? What are you looking forward to accomplishing this year?
Ooh, this year is the catapult year. This year is, I put a theme to myself every year, like me and my wife. It's like, this year is let it go. Number one for me is the small little things, let it go. The things that used to bother me and upset me, let it go. Because what's more than holding that into your heart that gets to your brain now becomes so malleable up there that it's just like getting in a funk. that's like my big theme. And so that's been helping me big time the last few months of just letting the small things go. And even in business, if things don't go our way, there's a reason. So if we can solve that problem, let's solve it. But for our big goals, we have big goals to attain for our team. We just brought on a new lead manager. So we're running 2 lead managers to 2 acquisition guys who are out in the field. So our inside sales agents who are outside sales. And then we have our transaction, who's our operation manager. And then Andrea, who runs our dispo side for selling the deals. And then me and Adrian are more on the back end, but also running the sales day to day in the operation. But really hitting a stride to go over 7 million in revenue for our goal this year, 140 deals. And then hitting an average fee of like $60,000 a deal. So we're really trying to stride big and then really push hard on our marketing, because we're going to have to increase sooner than later more on our marketing. And so our future goal is to really get into, like I said earlier, our radio and our billboards, and just really brand ourselves everywhere. So where people get so upset that they cannot turn a corner and not see us. Like, that's how powerful we're trying to make ourselves land big in SoCal. So
I love it.
yeah.
What do you think are the biggest obstacles or headwinds that you're going to face in this next growth phase for 2025?
It's always been a pitfall for us, is our follow up. So as long as we're hitting our stride hard on our follow ups and setting at least 2 to 3 appointments a day for our guys to be out in the field, that's going to make headwind. And so we've been tracking that heavily and deeply. And so we realized the more appointments we're on, is more likely to get a contract, like, just without a doubt. So that's just always been an obstacle for us the last couple of years, which is why we brought in our inside sales team to really hone in on those follow-ups and to really hit as hard as we can on setting those appointments, because it's not hard to get the sellers back on the phone, but we'd rather set the appointment and get out there as soon as possible to really, really get in front of them. And also, it's speed to lead. When those leads come in, we need to stay on it. And we've realized the weekends have been crazy. So we're now internally building a schedule for us to really be on the weekends and take these calls, because even our guys will take weekend deals all day long. And those are the secret deals. Those are the deals that people don't want to go on, but we'll go on them. Doesn't matter if it's all the way in Visalia or if it's all the way in Chula Vista. Doesn't matter what end of the world it's on. Our team knows, and that they're that committed. And so buying into that vision.
So, and for those that listening and hope they picked up on, those 3 things that you mentioned are all kind of leading indicators or leading metrics, and it's so tempting to get caught just in lagging metrics, looking at the rearview mirror, like how many deals did we close, or those sorts of things. But you're really talking about the behaviors, the activities on a daily basis that have to happen for you to have a chance of reaching your goal. Is that something that you've now rolled through the organization? Are all of your folks thinking about their leading measures and what they have to do day to day?
Definitely. Yeah. They know every day that they track their numbers. It's being tracked. Their calls are being tracked. Their conversations are being tracked. Everything down to the second is being tracked, because what's more important than creating that strong schedule is knowing what their numbers are and knowing what they have to attain to hit the numbers. And if they're not hitting their numbers, then we know that's a key indicator of why they didn't either set the appointment, make the offer, and or get something out for a signed agreement.
If there's somebody that's hitting their numbers, but maybe they're not doing the activity as you've prescribed, do you let them run, or do you say, no, we're all following this same exact play structure?
So I think in that case, it might be a sales process issue. It might be something that they're not, asking correctly in the conversation, or they're not getting by with the seller, or they're setting appointments that might not be as motivated. So they can be hitting their numbers, but if they're not seeing the results come from that, then it's now, all right, we got to go back to our film. What is going on? What's the conversation like? We got to break this down. These are things that I should and shouldn't say. These are things that we got to manipulate and change because it may not work. So we've had, I've even been in that stance myself where I'm hitting my numbers in the beginning, and I'm like, well, what's going on? I'm not getting any deals. Well, it's something in your sales process that's not correlating. It's something is not linking up. So we do break that down 100%, because you can make 100 calls a day, $100 a day, 100 contacts, whatever. But if you're not seeing the producing the outcome, It's something that either can be internally up here, or it's what is being talked about in those conversations that may or may not be a real lead.
Yeah, yeah. Nick, I love the approach, and I love the the process and discipline, and mostly the mindset piece that you've talked about a couple times. I think that's super key, and I hope people tap into that. And I wish you the best in 2025. Sounds like it's going to be a great year, and sounds like you set the stage well for it. So, yeah, go get it, man.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah. If you like this episode, please subscribe or make sure to turn this on to a friend or colleague that can get some value from it as well.